Hello there, I'm Billy Alexander from YYNOT. How you doing, guys? Today I thought I'd talk a little bit about the subject of arranging or arrangements for songs. Um, those of you who have not been in bands or in the studio and you're just a fan of music, I'm sure you've heard the term and maybe you know more about it than I'm going to assume you do. But anyway, I'm going to talk about it a little bit and in a little bit of detail, and I'm going to use the song Hourglass as sort of a topic of study, so to speak. Hold on, barking dog. And go through some of it. So arranging is a very important part of putting the music together, and it's different in different forms of music. In the stuff for YYNOT, because it's sort of more progressive rock, you know, there's a lot to it. There's a lot going on. But you can use the analogy in movies where you have the director and you have film editor or editing. So the director might film knowing that he has the script, the song, and he knows how he wants to present it, which would be sort of almost the overall mix and the performances by the actors. And then there's the editing, and the editing is where the film can all really come together and have a flow or have a drag or too much of this or that. So with rock bands, it's a little different, but similar because you know in a normal situation, you get into a studio with a producer and you hammer out the arrangements through recording pieces of it, rehearsing it, and seeing how it flows. Maybe this part should go here sooner, or maybe there's not enough of a lift or an interesting part somewhere. So in our case, I have to do that well in advance and spend a lot of time on it so that there's no more guesswork. For example, once it's handed to the drummer, even the tempo. So the tempo would have to be figured out by me in advance to figure out where the vocals might be sit in the pocket, where they might be a little too rushed or maybe they're a little too dragged. So in the case of Hourglass, I had to come up with different tempos for different sections, because in putting it together I realized that on places where the vocals are singing, they sit well, but then when the riffs would come back in, they were just a little draggy. So I'd have to create a new sort of tempo map for the drummer to follow that going forward. So another example in that song would be in terms of arranging, where you have the intro part, and then so that part on its own has its own thing, and it has its own rhythm, and it has its own melodies. But I needed to come up with a bass part that had some movement to it, that kind of went back and forth, so it didn't sound so squared off. So I came up with that part for Tim, that's a so it has a little bit more of that sway. So that would be an example of that. And then when this riff comes in, and then it goes to this picking. That is an introduction to the next part to introduce the vocals to go with that. And that part, the tempo's down just a little bit to suit the vocals. Another aspect of that song for arranging would be when the key change happens, next part of that verse. And so that's a key change, and then it gets brought back to the key of B for that part. And then the chorus hits. So all those pieces of the puzzle are brought to the fore to present the song, so that the listener doesn't at any point in time feel like they're just sort of zoning out or feeling the need for wanting to hear some fresh information or melody or some sort of energy. So I'll skip past the chorus part today, but since we're just focusing on arrangements. But another example of arrangement in that song would be when the solo comes out. from a whole different section, and I reintroduced this riff quickly. Well, the band has already done that the way we did it. So right there, I put punctuations for the bass and the drums to sort of underneath put pushes, a bump, 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 bump. So that makes the riff feel like it's a new thing, even though really from the guitar point of view, it's the exact same riff. And then there's a hole. And I put the hole in there right after that so that when that final chorus hits, it sort of punches through. It doesn't just, kind of walk in, but it's, the lyric says, "a lightning," so that on that word, the band has impact. So that is another example of arranging. And then two more things. It's a long song with a lot of parts. Is the sort of musical bridge that I added, where it's it goes to a whole new section of and then to get out of that, it goes back to the climb. But for that, instead of what I've done before, which was the going to that chord, that's sort of an unsettled chord. I wanted a chord in a sequence that sounded settled into a new cascading section. So that's why it goes. And then that is where we can come. What's the pattern? I haven't played it in a long time. It's not quite right, but you get the idea. I haven't played this song in so long. But yeah, so then that part of the arrangement, and a side note to that, was I intentionally left in the demo for the drummer no bass parts. That's where I stopped playing bass on the demo, so that he could have freedom to play fills wherever he chose and put punctuations in the kick drum and not feel sort of a slave to an existing bass part, thereby allowing Tim then on the final track, once the guitar and the drums were there, to learn what he played on the drums, to then come up with his own ideas on hitting punctuated parts, because I wanted that fade out to be guitar just be sort of its static. Let's see if I can remember that. There it is. So the guitar in that case of the arrangement is sort of the, it's the color, it's the waves, it's the atmosphere, it's the texture. And the drums and the bass are doing all these punctuated parts. And final side note on this song, Hourglass, there are actually no keyboards on the song. Anything that sounds like a keyboard was actually a guitar pedal, a timeline delay pedal that has a sort of a pitched up delay to it. So anytime I would do something like, or those kind of things that had sort of a trail that sounded like keyboards, it's not keyboards. So that song is 100% just bass, drums, and guitar and vocals. Anyway, hopefully I haven't bored you guys too much and gave you a little bit of insight on putting some of this stuff together. Of course, you could do like most of us when we were younger and didn't think about it at all, and just we like it because we like it. We don't really care how it was put together. Later in my musical career, I found that to be, I'm more interested in how things were done and recorded and all the nuts and bolts, especially years later. Hourglass is almost, 2 years old now, so hopefully you've had enough time to just take it for what it is. And if you're interested in some of this backstory, cool. If not, feel free to fast forward. Okay, hope everybody's doing good out there, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.